I have always viewed the world a bit differently than most people. This has led me to have unique experiences from most people, even when those people have had the same experiences as me. I cannot tell you how most people think, as I am not most people. I have only observed that it is oftentimes not the same exact way that I think. To highlight this, I would like to share a story with you that is very prominent in my memory. It is a story I have reflected on many times throughout my life, for many different reasons. When I was much younger than I am now, I ventured almost half a planet away from everything I had ever known, with nothing but a suitcase. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something like this and actually pull it off. So, like I have done throughout my life, I gave myself the hardest conditions possible to overcome in this test, then set out to conquer the goal. During this time, I would often spend time with a couple who lived in the literal absolute middle of nowhere, and those times were some of the best times of my entire life. The husband was very much into fish, and one of his most prized possessions was a giant 500-gallon fish tank, with 8 of the top 10 most aggressive freshwater fish species inside of one giant tank. I would spend hours observing this tank, and spent what amounts to a rather significant portion of my life watching those fish species interact together within that tank. The tank was very ordered. Every fish knew its place on the hierarchy. Of course, the biggest fish was at the top of the hierarchy. Order came in through the chaos though, because while the biggest fish could beat the second biggest fish, most of the time, he could not beat the second biggest fish, and any other fish in the aquarium. Also, near the top of the hierarchy lived 3 small fish of the same species. They were the smallest fish species in the tank, and the only species with 3 of the same family members in the tank. No matter the task, they operated like a team, like a SEAL team, with deadly efficiency. They could take on even the biggest fish by attacking it from 3 sides at once. The biggest fish had his house, and he also had his girlfriend's house. The big fish could go to his girlfriend's house when he pleased, but his girlfriend never came to his house. Oftentimes though, when the big fish was alone in his house, of course the biggest apartment in the tank, the second biggest fish would often visit his girlfriend. His girlfriend even ended up laying eggs during the time I lived in that area. The big fish would watch over those eggs almost all of the time. The big fish was sterile. Lol. I would contemplate many things about nature and life while watching these fish. One of the things I would contemplate often was the role of evolution within all of it. There exists in Australia a snake species and a frog species. I could utilize artificial intelligence to look up the exact species names, but it is not relevant to the story. The snake species produces the strongest venom out of any animal that exists. The frog species is specifically hyperimmune to snake venom. The 2 species developed in extreme isolation over millions of years. In their ecosystem, they grew up balanced. They perfectly counter each other. If you follow a 100% Darwinian course of evolutionary logic, then how does the duck-billed platypus exist? This is another question along these same lines that I spent a large portion of my life reflecting on. The answer to the question is simple. A 100% Darwinian course of evolutionary logic is not correct. I am not at all stating that Darwin theory is incorrect. I am stating that Darwin theory is very obviously incomplete. If Darwin theory ends up being incomplete, then what completes this entire picture? The introduction of chaos. More specifically, chaos theory. Evolution is simultaneously random and ordered. If it is ordered, then what brings about the order? What is the balancing mechanism? The environment is the balancing mechanism. That is where the order comes from. Order is external to the organisms. Order is a part of the evolutionary process itself, the balancing mechanism. How this plays out in actuality is through the environment. Give the diverse environment extreme diversity. That is what you get. Close the environment into an ever tighter box against 2 directly competing species, and you get a bigger and bigger arms race. This is the balancing mechanism of life itself. I saw a meme the other day that is stuck in my mind and has culminated in what is now the creation of this video. It is a simple Facebook post in which the author states, LLMs are so weird because one side is people with 5 PhDs who have been studying neuron activations for 3 decades, and on the other side is someone called Le3tman33 with an animator, just casually releasing increasingly better performing fine tunes of Mistral. It is not lost on me that I am Leitman in this equation. So, what is my secret sauce within all of this? None to me. I have no secret sauce. I simply think about the same things that I have thought about my entire life, and now I apply them to artificial intelligence. When I first started researching these things, the people with the 5 PhDs told me adamantly that artificial intelligence could not work the way I think it does. So, I learned exactly how artificial intelligence works on a mathematical and scientific level to the point where I could argue those things directly to the people with 5 PhDs. I did that for a while and most of those people simply blew me off because I did not have 5 PhDs. Some did not. The ones who blew me off told me that if I could actually do it, then just do it rather than argue with them over it. Fair enough. I guess education does have value after all. So then I started doing that. I built my own models, my own algorithms. I demystified every part of it for myself. Coming back to the question, how is it that I am able to get a lot of these things right compared to the experts, who I currently have an advantage over in many of these areas? It is simple. I did not simply listen to the experts. I may not be an expert in everything, but I have become an expert in some things. That has taught me a great deal about being an expert overall. The very first thing I learned is that there are actually no experts that exist in the world. No person in the world is an expert at everything. No person is even an expert in one whole subject. I would spend time interacting with and learning from AI. I would formulate opinions about how AI works overall based on these things. Experts would tell me I am wrong. And that is not how intelligence, or sentience, or consciousness, or learning, or knowledge acquisition, or a plethora of other things actually works. Then I would go back to the AI, and it would work again. In those scenarios, either the AI is wrong, or the experts are wrong. After a while of doing that, I simply began putting my money where my mouth is. If I am right that artificial intelligence can actually learn, then I should be able to build algorithms to make them learn better. Lo and behold, I can do that. If I am right and raw processing power doesn't actually mean the most in this broader equation, I should be able to make gains based on those assumptions. I have built up a catalog of model releases now that prove this to be true. What is the point of this particular video? At the end of the day, this particular video is an ode to anyone who dares to think different. The world does not always reward that. It is the hardest path you could possibly take in life. There is also no other path that will ever be as rewarding. Life itself, the universe, is not simply built on these differences, it is balanced around these differences.